going to go and get started. Well, my name is Corey Tucker. I'm a singer-songwriter in the Cincinnati area. And this is our first Soul Sessions event, our podcast, whatever you want to call it. And today we're talking to Shawna. And we're so excited that you're here with us, Shawna. Thanks for taking the time to share your wisdom and guidance with us. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. I have been a therapist for about 18 years. And I've worked for nonprofits, for-profits. I've worked in private practice, and there's an alphabet soup behind my name, but it really just means that I'm an independent licensed counselor in the state of Ohio, and I can kind of put out my shingle, Corey, and I can diagnose and treat independently of a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I'm specialized in two different licenses with substance use disorders. We call it SUD, and then mental health disorders.
Gotcha. And what led you down that road?
Well, and I do want to say, I got permission to say this, but I am the clinical director at Freedom Recovery, which is in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. So you had to get permission. Why is that? Just
because it was a live event, so.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, yeah. Will those folks be watching as well, or?
I don't think so. I invited two that I have a relationship with, as far as a good, camaraderie. So we'll see.
So what made you get it? Like, what was the thing that said, "Hey, I want to be a counselor. I want to be a therapist." What was that thing that made you step into that?
It was really out of my own, and not to step in the deep waters, but I'm going to step in the deep waters here. It was really out of my own grief. I had several miscarriages, and I was trying to have a child and was struggling with some infertility issues, and a lot of women do. And I was at that time, I was in a church where it seemed like all the ladies were having, children. Everyone was getting pregnant. I thought, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. And so after a miscarriage that happened where I had a DNC procedure, I was traveling with, at that time, my husband, and it was Mother's Day. And I was seeing all these signs, and I was feeling so lost and so not seen and so invisible as a woman, as a human. And I said, I want to be there for other women who are in my position. How can I help other women that are like me, that have struggled with infertility, struggled with wanting to have a child, or even have been raised with that idea that as a woman, your value comes from being able to birth children.
So that's how it started, but your specialty is in recovery, right?
Actually, I'm about 60-40.
Okay.
About 60 mental health and about 40 substance use disorder, but it is growing because I continue to educate myself more on substance use disorder. But I swim. Here's what I say: I swim in mental health, and I dog paddle in substance use disorders.
Okay. And so when you talk about mental health, that's that buzzword that everyone's talking about right now, right?
Yep.
Can you walk us through what that means and how you conduct business?
Well, I tell you, it is interesting. Currently, I don't have a client caseload, but for many, many years, I did have a client caseload. And so as far as seeing trends and seeing things emerging, I think one of the biggest things that I see sort of as a hot topic with mental health is the youth that is glued to social media. And it has to, when we say excessive use is usually defined by over 2 hours a day on social media. And that is really causing an uptick in anxiety and depression for our youth. So I'm seeing that as a big trend. It was interesting, Corey.
You said anxiety.
Anxiety.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it causes anxiety for a lot of different reasons, actually, but it's by comparison. Like, so people are comparing themselves to people that are online or on social media and think, I'm not as pretty, I'm not as thin, I'm not as talented. I'm not as smart. I'm not as popular. And so the comparisons really are a joy robber. It's really a thief in our kids' lives and in adult lives. I mean, we struggle with it too, comparisons. And so social media kind of puts that on blast.
And that paralyzes people. Because we're seeing in social media, typically you're seeing the very best of people, right?
Yeah.
Their highlight reel, as you may say,
Yeah. And I wanted to give you, Corey, not to jump into like statistics or anything like that, but I think sometimes a couple percentages are a good thing to like go over. But
Sure.
do you mind if I jump right into
Go
some
for it.
numbers?
Go for it.
Okay.
This is open discussion. This is
Hey, all right.
wherever we
Okay.
go is wherever we go. Of course, we had an agenda, but we're
We're going to just go wherever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses begin by the age of 14, and 75% by the age of 24. So
You said so 50% by 14,
yes,
75% by 24.
by 24.
Wow. So
And I can attest to that. To jump right in, I have struggled in my adulthood, and it was about 23 or 24 that I was diagnosed with depression. And so, when I like to talk to people, it really balances it and it humbles me because I know what it's like to experience depression. I know what it's like to experience anxiety, but I also know what the head knowledge, right? The book, the literature, what the textbooks are saying, what the DSM is saying as far as anxiety and depression, what it is, how it affects us. So I come from it experientially, and then also from kind of educators or learners standpoint.
So wow.
And I have a couple more facts and figures for
Go
you.
for it. Okay. I'm gonna start writing some of these down so I can reference them.
Right. And I also want to talk a little bit about cyberbullying too. We get there. If we can get there, I want to talk about cyberbullying. But there are a few things, like 1 in 5 adults in the US currently are experiencing mental illness, and 1 in 6 young people, so ages 6 to 17, experience a mental health disorder each year. So roughly, I'm doing the math, roughly 23% of the US population has mental health illness or concerns or diagnosis.
How many, if this you might not have the answer to this, but how many of that 23% goes untreated? If you had to
Oh my. There's a lot. We talk about people kind of falling through the cracks, Corey, and not getting the services that they need. There's many different reasons why there's disparity there. But some of it is financial, social, economic issues. People are not able to get the treatment that they need. Even insurance is so expensive. Being able to find even a good provider, and sometimes it takes a minute to find a good provider. Like just searching for a provider, that's something that I want to talk about a little bit more in terms of finding that person to connect with, because that's important.
Yeah, that's great. What are some practical steps that someone can, let's say they don't have resources or the financial backing, what are some steps that someone could take to begin to address some of those mental issues?
Well, okay, so there's a few things that I want to touch on with that. One is, okay, so research tells us as counselors and therapists, kind of a little shop talk here, is that it does not matter how many degrees or how much education I've received as a therapist or as a counselor. That is not what prompts people to change, to make changes in their lives. What prompts people to make changes in their lives is the connection that they feel with their provider. So if I can connect with an individual and find out what their world life view is, what they value, what's important to them, and I can connect with them on that level, then I have more ability to see movement or change in their life, and they have more ability to change in their life as well. So it really does not come down to the degrees or the education. It really comes down to the connection.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. There's so much that's going through my head right now.
And also in terms of looking and finding, right? Like you have to what what is the old phrase? You have to kiss a lot of toads or whatever.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah.
kiss a lot of frogs before you find the prince. So I want to give a couple of things in terms of I want to talk really quick about antidepressants. And honestly, if you have a diagnosis of depression, which is very common in the U.S., and you are wanting to have a, you're looking at your treatment options, and medication is one of those things that's important to you, then the average to be able to find not only the dose but the actual prescription that works for you is about 12 changes with medications and with dosages to be able to come to the right level that works for you. So that is interesting thing too. So it's not, people say it's a science, but honestly sometimes it's an art form too. Like you have to know the science of things as far as how depression works, how it affects the body and the mind, but you also have to know other layers of it, how it affects a person at work, how it affects them in relationships, so
And just the other piece of that is it takes 12 times if you found the right provider.
if you found the right provider,
Because
that's right.
that's
Yeah.
another. I mean,
Uh-huh.
you're walking through that, right?
Yep. And I will say the one thing that I've liked is I really like Psychology Today because they have a search option where you can put in specifiers in terms of, male or female, cultural differences. You can look up age, you can look up experience, you can look up licensure, proximity in terms of how close are they to you, whether or not you want to do like telehealth, or you want to be in person, like face to face with a counselor. So they really have some really good search criteria with that, and that's online. People can go to Psychology Today and find that.
Psychologytoday.com. Okay, all right. Perfect, perfect.
Yep.
Man, we just jumped right in, didn't we?
Yeah, we
We
did.
just, we just straight jumped right in. I mean, we talked about that defining moment in your life that really sets you on this path that you're on now. What was there some obstacles you had to overcome in this process?
I could say a lot when it comes to obstacles, but I have found out, Corey, that the obstacle is me.
Ooh,
I'm the obstacle. It's not things outside of me, outside of my peripheral. It is me. Like it is my own internal hangups sometimes that don't allow me to have the success that I want to see, whether it's in relationships, whether it's at work. It's in all areas of life. I find that I'm kind of the stumbling block at sometimes my own. We have our own. Let me say this: there are constructs that we have in our minds, right, from a psychological point of view, and these constructs that we set up are things that we think, yes, that these things happen and occur in life the way that I thought they occurred in life, and everything kind of backs that up. So the it's kind of complex, and I'm trying to simplify it, but it is an internal paradigm that we have. I use the word Weltanschauung, which is a German word, and it means world life view, and everyone is looking through that lens, and that is, it's brought up by a lot of different things in terms of how we were brought up as children, how our parents saw the world, and that was passed down to us, in terms of our internal paradigms, how we see the world. And so it is an interesting thing to talk about because it is important, right? It is important, those thoughts that we have. I sometimes call them ants or automatic negative thoughts and distortions. It is sometimes, and that interrupts our paradigm sometimes. But yeah, Weltanschauung, that's the word of the night.
So you talked about, so when you talk about those automatic thoughts, sometimes we can get in these loops, right, and repeat those negative thoughts over and over and over and over again to the point that they beat you down.
Mm.
What are some, what advice would you give someone that's trying to change that record?
Well, so you're really talking about like the internal tape, right? That we all
Right.
play,
Correct.
that our self-talk.
Correct.
And if it is negative and that's what we're hearing and that's what we're feeding on all day, it's going to come out in our actions and our relationships and our work. So first of all, I would say, here's a word that's not used often, but I say extend grace to yourself. Change is really difficult. And if you had any kind of trauma growing up as far as your childhood, it is very difficult to find I call it bounce back or resiliency. To be able to bounce back from things is difficult. And so I say extend some grace to yourself. And in terms of that self-talk, it starts very small. Like I really like Mel Robbins and Brene Brown are a couple of ladies I really like that are in the field of psychology. And one thing that Mel Robbins says is that she says, give yourself a high five in the mirror every morning, which it sounds really kind of simple and maybe a little silly, but it's just the idea that, hey, I'm doing okay. Like I'm doing all right. And it's starting like little changes, like little messages that we send to ourselves to say, hey, I'm going to be okay. This is going to be all right. I'm not going to be a fool. I'm not going to look foolish. I'm not going to, fall on my face, and it gives us just a little boost of confidence. And it's just little things like that, little steps that we can take like that to start changing that internal dialogue.
That's good.
And sometimes that internal dialogue can be really critical. And sometimes it comes from a lot of different sources, but some research says that internal voice, that critical internal voice really comes from maybe it could come from a parent or from a grandparent that was very perhaps very critical or judgmental, and so you hear their voice instead of your voice. Like internally, you hear their voice, or something they would have said to you as a child or growing up. And so that's not always the case. That is just some research that's out there that says that's a possibility.
Wow. So taking those small little steps to change that negativity will eventually, hopefully, snowball into more steps to change that negativity.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware. I guess the other piece is you have to be aware of those thoughts.
Yeah. Well, and you said the word counseling and therapy really only work if there's some level of self-awareness. So if there is not self-insight, you're not going to get a whole lot of change in terms of counseling and therapy.
Now, can you notice that right away when you're with, someone?
Yeah. Yeah. Several things will clue me into a lack of self-awareness or self-insight. Some of it is some fixed ideas, some denial of reality, like not seeing things as they truly are, but seeing a fictional, something, maybe a story that somebody has been telling themselves to feel better or to cope or to make it through if they've experienced a lot of trauma. Does come down to the stories that we tell ourselves, and switching those stories is not easily done, but it can be done. That's the key. It can be done.
So self-awareness, that's a big deal when it comes to therapy and counseling.
And do you, and I always ask this question of people, like, do you even know what you value? What's important to you in your life? And is there an incongruency between what you say is important, what you say is a value, and then how you're living? Are they connected? Or is there an incongruency? Is there a separation between the two? And a lot of people, if they're not self-aware or have not done any kind of internal work in terms of knowing who they are and what they value, it's very difficult to say, hey, am I living life in the way that I want to live life? The quality of life is, am I living in the quality of life that I want based on, well, a lot of different things, but it just comes down to knowing yourself and being self-aware and realizing what your values are. And sometimes I look at as a backdoor, fear is kind of a backdoor to values, right? So if somebody has 6 locks on their door, right, they're saying that what's inside is important to them, is valuable to them. So my family, I'm going to protect, right? So the 6 locks represents fear, but also represents that I value my family. So I value family. I value who's inside my home. So, I think when we take a look at our fears and the things that we are afraid of, it will highlight what we truly value. Somebody has said that you can tell a person what they value by 2 things, by how they spend their time and how they spend their money. That's another way to look at it.
So do you think that's the hardest work that someone has to do?
I think change is hard. I mean, honestly, Corey, I think about like trying to say no to brownies, right? Right? Let's just take it down to something really simple. Let's say take it down to like saying no
Okay.
to a warm donut on a Monday morning at work. So, change is difficult and change happens in increments. Change happens in degrees. There was a book written on rocket science, and the idea of change that happens if it starts little down here, by the time the trajectory of the rocket or whatever that is being flown, or the spread in terms of the change of the degrees all happens incrementally in small degrees, at this point, and then the trajectory of your life and your thoughts and your relationships, it magnifies. So
those basically what I hear you're saying is those little things you do every day has impact.
yes.
Whether that's a thought, whether that's where you spend your energy, where you spend your money, those things that you do every day have impact. And
Makes a difference. Yeah.
if you can begin to address those one at a time, little by little, in a year your life looks totally different.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Relationships, even if we're talking about, and so I'll just put some self-disclosure out there. I've recently lost 100 pounds and am
Well,
not finished.
congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm not done with my health and fitness journey. And in fact, I feel like it's just beginning in terms of self-discipline and getting into the gym and doing some weight workouts and that sort of thing. But it happened by making small decisions in terms of, is this something I want? And you ask yourself, what do I truly want? And what I had was not what I wanted. I was not happy with myself. It's an amazing thing that internal paradigm that we were talking about earlier. It's, the flip side of that is like rose-colored glasses, right? You see everything through a lens, in terms of either not being happy with your life and the decisions that you're making,
Yep.
or being happy and seeing everything kind of rose-colored. So, for me, it was making a decision, hey, I don't want this anymore. This is not what I want. And then it becomes, well, what do I want? What do I want? And then taking ownership of that process. Like, okay, all right, I know what I want now. How do I get there? And so, yeah, those are some of the steps, in terms of just the thought process. But there's a lot of obstacles. And you talked about obstacles earlier, and I think I got way late and I was talking about other things, Corey, but there's a lot of obstacles that come up, and it's amazing how our minds operate.
So this brownie idea, right?
Yes.
Say you want a brownie every night.
Yep.
And sometimes probably if you're eating a brownie every night, that habit becomes an automatic thing, right? But if you can stop and see your body, your mind wanting that brownie, and you can identify those triggers, and then begin to maybe reroute them somehow. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Those little changes?
Yeah, I'm a very visual person, so I like to use examples. And some of it is like it's sometimes it's an idea of a speed bump, right? So the speed bump isn't made for you to stop, but it is made to slow momentum down, right? To slow mobility down. So sometimes like going for the brownie, and sometimes maybe I want ice cream with the brownie, right? So it's one of those things that you have to slow down this thinking, like whether it's impulsivity, whether it's just that instant gratitude that you're looking for, like that instant hit of serotonin, that dopamine rush that you're looking for, that the brownie is creating for you. Another analogy would be like that there's a pothole right in the road, and if that pothole, we see it, so we have the ability to go around it, right? But sometimes we fall back into it, and then we have to talk about something that's called addiction, right? And so when does it not become a choice anymore? When do we become powerless and feeling like that we don't have the ability to choose anymore? And as far as just the U.S. population, that continues to be, an issue, and one that I see often in terms of where I work and the people that we serve. It does not seem to be going anywhere as far as addictions, whether that's gambling, pornography, whether that is cocaine, whether that's alcohol. It's it's prevalent.
Wow. Natasha, thanks for the words. Thanks for liking the live and joining us. Natasha says, have faith like the size of a mustard seed. I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks for sharing, Natasha.
Natasha.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Man, I feel like we need to take a little breather. And so we're gonna, the Soul Sessions is all about connecting, people like yourself and music together. I feel like we need to take a little breather and talk about, some music.
Yes.
If your life were a song, what genre would it be and why?
Oh, well, it would definitely be R&B.
Okay, all right.
It would definitely be R&B. I'm an R&B
like
girl
60s R&B, 1990s R&B, current R&B.
So, okay, I'm not good with numbers, so you can help me. So, Boys to Men, which would have been what era?
90s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I love, and I don't know if this is R&B, Corey, so you'll have to correct me because I'm not musically knowledgeable. But like, I love Tina Turner, Stevie Wonder, Al Green.
Oh yeah, the classics.
Yep.
I call that soul. I mean,
Marvin Gaye.
Those pioneers, were the thing that made what I do possible, right? They wrote the book, and I've studied all of those folks, and they're uber talented. Speaking of mentors, were there mentors in your life that inspired you, or were there people in your life that inspired you?
Yeah. There's several people I think I would mention. I would say, first of all, my dad. My dad has 2 master's degrees and a doctorate, and he's also an ordained minister. But one thing that I've learned about my dad, a couple things, generosity for one. And the other thing is that when you talk to him, you feel like you're the only person in the room. he makes you feel like you're the only person and that what you have to say is important. And so I learned that from an early age, to treat everyone, doesn't matter what their station is in life, to treat them with respect. And I learned that, as a little girl. And so I would say my dad is a big, a hero. Maybe is overused, but I certainly has influenced me
Yeah.
in many ways.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to think of anybody else that comes to mind. There was a lady who was a counselor, and she's passed away now, but her name was Adelia, and Adelia Barone was her name, and she was so gifted, not only with adults but with children, and especially in the idea of anxiety and helping someone to feel comfortable and in a space where they could open up and could talk about what was going on with them. And she just had a special talent of reaching and connecting with people that I haven't seen in too many therapists. And so she was very instrumental and was a mentor to me in many ways in my career. So
That's great. I love that.
yeah.
How important do you think it is for people to have mentors?
Gosh, I think it's really, it shouldn't be outdated to talk about, there's other words, Corey, and I'm word searching right now to try to find, besides mentor, there's other words
Life
that
coach.
denote. Like what?
Life coach?
Life coach? No, but I'm looking for something that goes a little bit deeper than that. Oh shoot, it'll come to me.
Accountability?
Yeah, it'll come to me later maybe. But the idea of having protege is not right either. It's not quite what I'm looking for. But kind of the idea of an apprentice, and I think being able to okay, people learn in different ways, right? There's a lot of different learning styles, right? So there's kinesthetic, which is hands-on, right? I want to touch, I need to manipulate, I need to feel what's going on. So visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. So I think people can learn in different ways and pick up on things in different ways. So I think that's, that you have to look at that part of it too.
I like this next question.
All right, I'm ready.
This is always a fun one because it reveals, right? It reveals a piece of who you are and your personality. What's something most people wouldn't know about you just by meeting you? Yeah, that's a stumper. It's a stumper.
I know.
Stumper.
I was thinking, well, let's see here. Well, I used to be a drama major in college.
All right.
Yeah, and
So that means you had to sing and dance and do all those things?
well, not dancing, but I did sing. I went to a very conservative Christian school, and they
Okay.
did they said
like-
Corey,
it was
they
like
said no
Footloose.
dancing.
It
They
was
said no
Footloose.
dancing.
Yeah.
That's aging me a little bit.
You couldn't. Wow, that's
I
crazy.
couldn't dance.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that
Now we don't
crazy?
think. Now we don't think twice.
Nope.
Every other TikTok you see is somebody's shaking it, right? I mean,
Right? No.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, let's see, what is something else about me? Oh, I had a cheesecake business. I make like New York style cheesecakes, and I make a really good cheesecake, Corey. And I'm just going to pat myself on the back a little bit here with this one because it's taken me a while to say, hey, I do this well. And I think people need
Okay.
to there's something about confidence, right? It's not narcissism. It's not narcissistic. It's not
right.
selfish to say, hey,
right.
hey, I do pretty good in this. I can make a mean cheesecake. So that's two things about me.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
I do like me a good dessert. I've never met a dessert I didn't like. So
What's your favorite dessert?
chocolate cake?
Chocolate cake. Okay, now let's
question.
go a little further now because I'm a foodie, so we got to talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
Are we talking dark, Semi-sweet, white chocolate. What are we talking? Milk chocolate?
Probably more like a German chocolate.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I forgot German chocolate.
that's the vibe. My mom makes this every Thanksgiving. My mom makes this German chocolate pie, and
Oh,
no one's allowed to get it in the house. And it's funny because for years I didn't share it. No one could touch it. It was mine.
Corey's pie.
It's Corey's pie. But I realized what it really was. It was an opportunity for growth for me. My mom was teaching me how to be generous. And it took many years to learn it. But now I'm happy if I can just take a piece home and I can give out the rest. But 15, 20 years ago, nah, that you touch my pie. Matter of fact, if you touch my pie, I'm probably gonna steal your food and then send you a photo of me eating it.
And eating it. Yeah, right, right. I will
Right.
tell you that growing up in my house, Corey, that we had birthday celebrations. We could pick out what we wanted for our dinner. And my brother and I, even to this day, still like the same dessert. And my mom has made it many times. And it's a confetti angel food cake with a white chocolate glaze. And yeah, it is delicious. It's like chewy, sweet, smooth, all at the same time. It's delightful.
I always find it interesting, what families do to celebrate each other and help each other grow. I at the time I didn't know that was an opportunity for growth for me. Um, but it was once so I enjoyed sharing that pie more than I enjoyed eating it. Now, anyway, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
so there was growth for me in that moment. It might seem silly and not important, but for me, I think I was in that space of this is mine, right? And in reality, this world, this human experience is we share this life, we share this consciousness, and
Yeah, yeah.
we how do we get to a place where you know we share each other's love and we give, right? And so I think that's why I was fascinated with bringing you on because essentially, your profession, you're carrying the load. You're carrying and giving people solutions on how their life could be, right? And so I can't imagine from an emotional standpoint if you have a caseload, how you take that on, how I'm sure there's things that they teach you how to, navigate, right? But on some level, we're still human and we can take some of that stuff on. What's that like?
Oh, that's a good question, Corey. Um, so there's a lot of different directions I could go with that. And I will say this, that we are human at the end of the day. We come in, with our internal paradigms, with our, automatic messages. Every therapist was a child at one time, had parents, had grandparents, somebody that imparted something into their life. So we come in with our own ideas about the world that we live in, and that is, meeting with each client, or even in my case, I'm meeting with I'm helping to counsel counselors, right? So other counselors that are looking to build and develop and grow into more seasoned professionals. So it is a challenge because we do connect. If you look at it, I'm a spiritual person, so I believe in a creator and a creation. So I look at the way that I'm created, and I'm created to connect with others. And so you have to learn in terms of in therapy, like, because sometimes a person might become attracted to you but it's not necessarily you, but they're attracted to somebody that's healthy, right? They're seeing somebody that actually is healthy. And so they want to get close to that person naturally. And so you have to learn how to disengage. You have to learn how to have really healthy, good professional boundaries. And it is difficult at times. It really is, especially in the mental health world, because you're such in usually long-term relationships in terms of therapeutic relationships with your clients. And so it is harder to disengage at times. Yeah. I try to leave it at the door.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Because, you know, the whole idea is like we bring our whole selves to work, you know, and we can talk about workplace trauma and a little bit of workplace PTSD. That's a whole nother issue.
That's where we were going, actually.
Oh, is that where we're going? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it's that's very real and affects a lot of people.
So what are some signs that workplace stress is impacting your mental health?
Oh, gosh. Well, we look at the major domains. So there's two things that I want to say. Sometimes in therapy, you have to learn how to talk to your doctor, to your psychiatrist, to your therapist and counselor. You have to use words that they will sink their teeth in, that they have more knowledge that they can do something with. And there's three words that have helped me in my career, and that's severity, duration, and frequency. So how intense is it? How long does it last? How often is it happening? And so you have to use those words sometimes to be able to describe what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're going through. And usually those are key words that kind of like a hook, you know, that somebody will say, okay, so we're talking about severity, duration, and frequency. So that is just, and I put that out there because it's important how we use our words to communicate to each other, and especially in the mental health world and in the substance use disorder world, what we need and what we want, and being able to communicate that is kind of a little bit of a lost art, to be honest with you. So it's something that needs to be worked on. But as far as signs and symptoms of workplace stress, workplace trauma, you will start to notice a decline, some deterioration, maybe, and you're not sleeping as well at night. You can't turn your brain off. Your brain is like, I call it race head, you know, where you have all these racing thoughts. So you can start seeing it in your thought patterns. You can see it in your sleep patterns. You might be short with people. You know, your attitude or your temperament might be you might be a little quippy with people, a little snippy with people. So it comes out in a lot of different ways.
So how do you think, how can an employee advocate for their mental health in the workplace?
Very carefully. Very carefully, because there's a lot of politics at play at work, as we all know, right? And some of those politics, I'm trying to think the best way to say this. It's difficult because you try to, there's the business decisions, there's the business side of an agency, of private practice or whatever, and numbers are important, right? Because you got to keep the lights on, you got to keep the doors open, that sort of thing. But the other side of it is, how do you keep your employees happy, right? And that's two different things, two very different things. And sometimes those things are at odds, right, with each other. So learning to advocate for yourself, I would say make sure you go through the right chain of command, right? Make sure you start with your immediate supervisor. Don't try to go to the CEO. Don't try to go to one of the owners, you know, but go to your supervisor and kind of, I don't want to say plead your case, but start there in terms of advocating for yourself and what you need. Whether it's a mental health day, like some organizations don't have mental health days, some do. There's a lot of work yet to be done in terms of organizations, in terms of taking care of people's mental health. And so learning to advocate for yourself, I think it's super important, but it's also difficult. It's not an easy process.
Yeah. So be open to have that conversation.
Be open to have the conversation about it. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think some ways that someone can manage their work-related stress?
Well, I think it's interesting because I've had conversations with coworkers about trauma, and I had a young lady talk to me about her experience and feeling every day she felt belittled by her supervisor, her boss, and she felt very minimized, very overlooked. And oftentimes, sometimes you hear in workplaces that people always point out the negatives, but you never hear the positives. So we've got to switch how we talk to each other in the workplace too, in terms of being more affirmative to each other, and be proactive about that. So that is some of the things that I was thinking about in terms of workplace and being able to address it. But with this young lady that I was talking about, she eventually decided that, hey, she wasn't able to make any movement in terms of the leadership and in terms of the way she was being approached. So she ended up switching professions, right? And not professions, but she switched jobs. She switched agencies because she felt like she did not have any power, any movement in terms of the leadership there. And it was a very critical, overwhelming kind of, environment there that she worked for. So very toxic.
Yeah, I know on a personal level, for me, when I can't sleep and my constant thought is whatever I'm dealing with in that workplace, and it's sustained over a period of time, and it doesn't seem like it's going to let up, and that seems like it's going to be the how it's going to be moving forward. I make a quick exit out. I might even try to stick around for a bit and change things, but a lot of times the damage has been done. You've already been triggered, right?
Right.
So you have to find ways to protect yourself. That's
Yeah.
how I've handled it in the past. I'm not one to stick around and deal with a whole bunch of crap. I'm just not.
You're just not.
Not because I like that piece. I like that ability to use my creative talents, whether that's singing on stage or making a video or connecting with my friends. Right? I like to have that piece in my life, and so for me, the why has always been: is this job, is this thing getting me closer to the things that really matter?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's pulling me further away, then those decisions need to be made, right?
And sometimes you reach that point where you can't you can't see your way clear in terms of a situation, where maybe the power dynamics are such that you feel like you don't have any kind of leverage, and then it comes down to a really difficult decision. Is this somewhere I need to be? Is it time to move on?
Yeah, I always just realistically, I always say the leverage I do have is my energy, my time, my space, my talents. That's about the only real leverage that I feel like I have. And so where I share that is how I can take care of myself. And I think I've always been that way. But there's this book that what's going on? Oh, okay. There's this book that you told me to read, and I started reading it, and it's Mel Robbins, Let Them, right? And there's two parts to the let them. And first of all, thank you for sharing that book. Right? If I'm gonna pull up this quote.
Yeah.
Let me pull
Yeah.
up.
Pull it up.
I love this. I love this. She says, if they want to leave, let them. If they choose someone else, let them.
Let them.
If they don't support you, let them. If they don't invite you, let them. Stop wasting your energy trying to control or change people. Let them show you, let them show who they really are. And then here's the part that's really important, right? Then you choose what you do next. So you're not powerless in those moments, right? You're
Right.
not you're not looking for their validation at that point. So that book has, man, when you shared that book with me and I started reading, and there was times in my life where I didn't let a whole bunch bother me, but it's as I've aged and relationships have become way more important in my life, I found myself allowing what someone said or did to control or have an effect on me. And the thing that Mel Robinson says is that every day, you have to be in a place where you can say, let them. And it's not, you're not gonna change that overnight, but it's a process, right? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's those small little changes that you make
Yeah.
that a year from now, bam, your life is different. You're happy, you're excited about what the future holds. And so I wanted to thank you for that book, but I also wanted to share with other people about that book. And
Yeah.
man, it's one of those books that it's so simple, right? Everyone knows these things, right? But to hear someone walk you through it step by step is sometimes what we need.
Well,
Really quick,
and we're human. At the end of
yeah,
the day,
yeah,
we forget things. We need to
yeah.
be reminded. So the let them theory, and then the second part of that is let me.
Let
Let
me. That's
me
right.
take ownership. Let me
That's right.
step into this space where I have the say so in my life.
That's right.
And that's ultimately, we want that. We want the empowerment, to be able to step into our own lives and make decisions and make movement. So I'm not all the way through that book yet, but it's been instrumental in terms of some of my internal thoughts in terms of how I see others, but how I see myself.
Yeah. And the crazy part is you don't realize how often you are driven by external forces and how those external forces can control you. And that's smacked me upside my head. That has been ouch, ouch. Okay, okay. It,
Yep.
it has been, telling. And so you talked about change earlier, right? That's an area that I have to change and grow in. And so that's scary, right? But it's also freeing a year from now, or whatever time frame, right? It's scary that you have to change and walk through that, but it's gonna be better not only for you but everyone else around you.
Right. Everyone else around. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing of it is, it comes down to something that we value, and that's freedom. Whether that's freedom of speech, whether that is, freedom of self, being able to move and be fluid. The whole idea of Corey, if I can kind of segue into boundaries just for a minute.
Sure.
The idea, and again, I'm visual and I'm a foodie, so I think of food analogies when it comes to boundaries, right? Are you ready for this? So a healthy boundary, should be like the human cell, right? Things can go in and things can flow out. It's almost like a jello stage, right? You think about jello.
Yeah.
It's not impermeable, right? But like the human body, the cell allows some things in and pushes some things out. And so we think about that. It's just as something as simple as the basic biology and science, the way that we're designed. You know, the smallest part of us is the cell, and even the cell has boundaries.
Yeah.
So it's just something I was thinking about today, in terms of talking with you this evening about just about mental health and about how important it is to have boundaries. And then that also boundaries also comes from, you know, self-reflection, self-awareness, knowing who you are, what are you protecting, what do you value. So all the things that we were talking about tonight, like it really encapsulates all of that, into healthy boundaries and how we see ourselves in the world around us.
You know, I am a processor over time. Like, if something happens to me, I don't typically react right away. I really take time to process through it. And what advice would you give someone that maybe their boundary has been stepped on, and they are a deep thinker, processor? They don't see it or know it in that moment.
Well, also, there's two things I want to say. There's a phrase that I've often heard, and it's called analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
That is when you're so over analytical that you are over processing,
Yeah.
overthinking, and you're probably putting things on top of it in terms of making assumptions that aren't even realistic or real. But it is some of our insecurities and things like that that come to the surface with that. But in terms of a person that has been abused, a person that has gone through childhood trauma, sometimes does not recognize that somebody is actively hurting them, actively trying to like dismantle, disrobe who they are as a person. And it takes sometimes an outside person, a friend, to say, hey, and this has happened to me once, and I can say I was sitting in a meeting, and I was realizing that a person at work had spoke to me in a way that was derogatory, and I hadn't picked it up, but this other person did. So yeah, so I had this person look at me and said, Shawna, I don't like the way, you know, X spoke to you. And I had to stop and I had to pull back and I had to think about that for a minute. I was like, am I allowing myself? Am I allowing mistreatment? And if so, why am I allowing it? So, you know, there's so many, we're complex, like it's like spokes on a wheel, right? There's so many spokes going into the wheel, and there's so many facets to who we are as far as boundaries and protecting ourselves. We have to first of all think that we're a person of worth. Do we see that? Do we see our own worth? You know, because we're going to protect what we think is worthy or valuable.
Woo!
That's some heavy stuff.
Man.
Some heavy stuff. Yep.
Well, I think Natasha, thank you. She says, treat others how you wish to be treated. That is the golden rule. It is certainly the golden rule. Thank you for sharing that. And she also has tattooed on her left hand, let them.
Oh,
That's
oh, look
cool.
at that. That's awesome.
Cool. That's cool. Well, I feel like when we first talked about doing this, I thought it was going to be, kind of light, but
Right?
we have covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we have.
I think this is probably a great stopping place, but I'm thinking you come back and then we invite other people on and we could talk to them and answer some of their questions. That's what I would probably say. Let's do. That would be cool for me.
Like a Q&A, like Q&A.
Yeah.
And
Correct. Correct. If we have any questions right now, we could take them. If not, we're going to hop out of here in about 2 minutes, and we're going to wrap this up. But while we're wrapping this up, I do have some more music related questions for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Okay. Is there a song that always lifts your spirits or has a deep meaning for you?
Yes. And then there's two songs for both of those. So one song, as far as lifting my spirits, has to be Megan Trainor.
How
That's
about
gonna
the
get.
bass?
Yep.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Oh my
I
God.
love that
All
song.
right. All right.
Well,
Okay.
and two,
Okay.
as a person that has struggled with their weight, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It kind of
Okay.
gives you permission to be, someone that isn't a size two.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
spoke to me like that.
Yeah.
That spoke to me.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
That
That.
and the other song, as far as deep meaning for me, is "His Eye Is on a Sparrow" by Lauryn Hill.
Ooh.
Yeah.
She sang the mess out that song.
Yep. And she sang it with I think it's is it Tanya or Tanya Blunt?
Yep.
Blunt?
Tanya Blunt.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
that
Yep.
is just probably one of my all-time favorite songs.
You know, a funny thing about Lauryn Hill is she played at the Apollo, which is a variety show that has been going on for decades at this point. And the first time she sang at the Apollo, she was booed off the stage.
Wow.
It's really
Wow. I didn't
interesting,
know
right?
that.
Really interesting. And
I did
so,
not know that.
yeah, and so that I'm sure that probably drove her to find out who she is as an artist.
Yeah.
Because you have, it's primarily a black audience, and
Mm.
the thing about black audience is yeah, we want you to sound good, but are you honest up there? Are you real up there? And so
Interesting.
yeah, so I think that was that space for her where she had to figure out who she was as an artist, and as we know, she came back and showed us exactly who
Yeah,
she
she
was.
did.
You know,
Yeah, she did.
I love those stories of comeback, and even in my own life, the first couple times that I really sang, I was terrible, but it was one of those things where I was like, I have to find out who I am as a
Mm.
right, and so for me, music has always been that therapy piece, right? And there are times that I've been in therapy, many times that I've been in therapy.
Same.
Yeah, but music has been that space for me to. I might not tell you exactly what's going on, but you'll be able to feel it and read it, and that's been healthy for me moving forward. So as we close, what are some other ways that someone can, besides going to see a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist, what are some healthy ways that someone could begin to walk through some of the mental health things that they could be struggling with on their own?
We are social people. There's just no arguing with that. There's no denying that. So stay connected with people, with your friends and with your family, with a support system, because those connections give us so many things in terms of, I know it's kind of a flip coin, right? There's joy and there's sorrow, and it's the same coin, right? So all the happiness and the joy that we get from life, it's usually from a relationship, right? And then also the sorrow, the pain, the heartbreak that we also feel is also from relationships. So it's also connection. But it is staying connected. Don't isolate. Don't pull away. Don't try to self-diagnose. Don't WebMD yourself.
Right,
You
that's
know,
a whole different thing, I
that's
suspect.
a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing. And but it's really simple things. Being kind to yourself, eating 3 meals a day, getting 8 hours, if you can, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. It is little ways that we tell ourselves that we love ourselves, right?
Yeah,
It's giving back to ourselves. And sorry, that's my dog Ellie.
that's all right.
Ellie's
He's,
barking
he's
in the
saying he's
background.
saying get off,
Get off of here.
or she's saying. So really, let's wrap this up. So April says, I'll start my list of questions for next time. Yeah, please start those. Send them to us. We'll get you on the next time. We'll come up with. I'll get with Shawna. We'll come up with a date that she can come back. Um, and then she also goes, "Oh, thanks for the badge." Natasha says, "You can rest, girl. I need to rest because this is heavy. I need to, man. I need this. I need to just relax for a bit because it was a lot walking through this.
I was gonna say, Corey, the one thing that people don't realize about therapy, about counseling, is that it does get worse before it gets better. And usually, if it's a good session, right? It's a good session. You need reprieve.
Yeah.
You need to unwind. You need to relax. You need to kind of let your hair, whatever. You need to just relax because it is overwhelming and it's intense.
April also says, crying and praying with music on a solo road trip is my best therapy. That is good. Today I was in a 90s gangster rap mood, so I obviously had some stuff to get off. So Natasha goes, journal, read, be honest, and staying with a supportive person. Yep. Perfect. I love it. Please don't miss the next one. We're gonna have Shawna back on here. Shawna, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy professional. Thank you for taking the time to get on Soul Sessions and get real with people, man. That's what this is all about, is connecting from a genuine place. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you, Corey, that I was looking at the lyrics to your song "In All Due Time," and what lyrics that stood out to me that impacted me is there's one line, and you correct me because I'm not sure that I'm getting it right.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm getting it right, but I don't know that I actually am. So it's is it standing alone in
Yep.
my own truth?
That's right. That's right.
Did I get it right?
That's right.
That to me speaks volumes. And I think as we age, whether you're a man or a woman, we develop and metamorphose as we get older, and things become more important to us, and different truths reveal themselves, and sometimes through pain, right? Through heartache, So I really like that line in your song.
So that you know that line has more than one meaning, right? It's a double entendre, as they would.
Double entendre.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, without revealing a whole bunch, what that line means is a lot of times in relationship we see our truth, right? But in reality, there is another truth there, right? And so, what do you do with that? How do you interact with that?
Oh yeah.
The line "standing alone with me and my truth"
With my truth.
means that I need to maybe bring someone else into this scenario so they can see things and sense things that I don't see.
Right. That's powerful. It is so powerful. Yeah. I just appreciate the lyrics to that song, and as I listen to it more, I think more about the layers that represents, and there's a lot of layers there.
There's so many. That song, we just released that song in January, and that song is my most vulnerable song to date because, like, I'm really being honest in it. And it was probably therapy for me more than anything. Because I think a lot of times people have this conception about artists or entertainers, right? And so, and the reality is that my job is really just to reflect what I see and what I live. And we're all in this human experience. We all share it different ways with each other. That just happens to be one of the ways I've spent a whole lot of time trying to work on. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you for noticing that. It warms my heart that I can be that vulnerable and be okay. Because Corey couldn't have done that 10 years ago. I couldn't have done that 10 years ago. There's no way.
It's amazing. It takes so much courage to be vulnerable. It takes so much courage, whether it's in a song or in a relationship, whatever, at work. It's just it sometimes takes years to be able to be that vulnerable.
Yep, and it's the other piece that we didn't really talk about, and I kind of alluded to it. There are certain communities that
Yes.
you're not vulnerable. You
Yes.
it's not cool to go to a counselor, but my hope and my prayer is that these small things that we do right here in these moments in soul sessions,
Right.
that we can begin to change and effect change within our culture.
Yeah. And I was doing a little research on that in terms of just the different cultures and how they approach therapy and counseling, how it's seen in terms of a cultural perspective. So yeah, there's lots to talk about.
Just so much to talk about.
There's
And
a lot to talk about.
this is what happens when this is, I was excited because I wanted people to see when we have discussions that these are the things that we go through. But let's close this thing down, man. Thank you, Shawna, so much.
Bye,
Out of
Corey.
trouble. I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.
Bye-bye.